Montana to reach our next camping ground, which was in beautiful Glacier National Park in the northwestern part of the state bordering Canada. We found an ideal campsite among the tall trees at the base of one of the park's many towering mountains. We had slept well that night in our easily set up small tents, and our portable pantry had made getting breakfast an easy task. We took most of the morning off, relaxing and doing assigned chores like dismantling, rolling up, and packing the tents, or reading more about Glacier Park in the National Geographic Wilderness Parks book we had brought with us. We weren't planning to do any actual mountain climbing here, but we were interested in viewing some of the more than 50 live glaciers in the park and feasting our eyes on the beautiful blue glacier lakes. It was fun to have a midsummer snowball contest at one point along the incredibly spectacular 70-mile-long Going to the Sun highway, winding its way through the park along the precipitous sides of the mountains. Near the midpoint of the drive, we had the experience for the first time of crossing the Continental Divide at Logan Pass at an elevation of over 6,000 feet. Water falling on the east side of this ridge would flow eventually to the Atlantic Ocean, while water falling on the west side would flow to the Pacific. The children literally straddled the continent by standing with one foot on each side of the line. Before stopping at a new campsite at the western end of Glacier Park, we took the opportunity to go on a group horseback ride along a scenic woodland trail, again within the view of tall mountain peaks. We bid farewell to this mountain paradise by going for a swim in the deep blue but somewhat frigid waters of Lake McDonald. We didn't spend much time passing westward through the narrow upper part of the sparsely populated state of Idaho, but we always enjoyed brief walks with new horizons before us. When we finally arrived in the westernmost state of Washington, we could not help but be impressed by the Grand Coulee Dam, at that time the largest concrete structure in the world, 4/5 of a mile long and 500 feet high. It was the greatest such structure yet built by the hands of man. We visited the dam en route to our 4th national park of the summer, the flower-bedecked Mount Rainier National Park, whose meadows overflow with an exquisite variety of wild alpine flora. As seen mirrored here in Reflection Lake, the glacier-covered summit of Mount Rainier, 14,410 feet high, the 4th highest mountain in the USA, is hidden in clouds, but it remains a magnificent landmark of the great Northwest. It was at our campsite here in Mount Rainier that we had a frightening experience when a black bear, much larger than the exhibition stuffed one shown here, broke open our neighbor's icebox so close to our tents that all 5 of us spent the rest of the night locked inside our station wagon. The great port city of Seattle was our next stop, where we viewed Puget Sound from the top of the Smith Tower, which 2 years later would be supplanted as the city's chief landmark by the 600-foot Space Needle built for the Seattle World's Fair in 1962. We crossed Puget Sound by ferry and drove around the Olympic Peninsula, stopping en route to visit a state-operated salmon fish hatchery, where we were fascinated at the sight of thousands of tiny, just-hatched baby salmon already valiantly seeking to leap upstream against the flow, as they would need to do as adults when returning to spawn. We tried to befriend a young deer in our next wilderness park, the Olympic National Park, located in the center of the peninsula at the northwest corner of the nation. We could see from this viewpoint on Hurricane Ridge why its rows and rows of snow-capped peaks made some people call it the Switzerland of America. Approaching the Pacific coast, we turned southward and took a ferry across the Columbia River into the shoreline state of Oregon, near the point where Lewis and Clark had ended their historic exploratory exhibition in 1805. And finally, after driving 4,927 miles from home, the Barstow family had likewise reached the Pacific Ocean and could go west no further. Setting up camp at a seaside state park, we used all of our senses to appreciate the awesome beauty of this rugged coastline: sight, sound, smell, touch, and even taste. Driving along the Oregon coast on the spectacular U.S. Highway No. 101, we stopped to look down at the seals on Sea Lion Rock and listen to their loud roar, which Mary described as sounding like halfway between an unhappy cow and an angry lion. Of course, we couldn't leave the Pacific Ocean without testing these waters all the way on the other side of the continent. So in we went through the shallow waves. It didn't take long for us to discover, however, that this seawater was much colder than we were used to, so back out we came, even faster than we had gone in. Then it came time for us to turn around and head homeward again, so each of us regretfully waved goodbye to the broad Pacific. David, Mary, Rob, Meg, and Danny, and we headed back east. Before leaving Oregon, we spent a day at another famous national park, the exquisitely blue Crater Lake. This incredible body of water fills the crater of an extinct volcano, with the steep circular walls rising to rims which are up to 2,000 feet high. Rowboats can be rented to see the lake from the surface, and the depth of the water in some places is as much as 2,000 feet. The lake has no inlet and no outlet, so its water comes solely from rain and snow. Evaporation keeps the water level fairly constant. Swimming here was a fantastic experience. The water was cold, but it was unbelievably pure and refreshing. We had never seen water with such a deep blue color. The setting was so beautiful, we used it for our family's annual Christmas photo that year. During lunchtime at our campsite, we once again had a 4-footed visitor. This large brown bear apparently just wanted to scavenge for food in the trash barrels, so we didn't really feel endangered this time. The next new state on our homeward trek was Utah, with its capital in Salt Lake City, which was founded in 1847 by pioneering Mormons under the indomitable leadership of Brigham Young. Seagulls saved their crops from crickets the first year. The world-famous Mormon Tabernacle provides perfect acoustics for their choir, but the temple here can only be entered by members of the Mormon Church of the Latter-day Saints. Going for a swim in the Great Salt Lake is a unique experience. You float practically on top of the surface. The water here is saltier than that of any other lake in the world except for the Dead Sea. It's so dense that a human body just can't sink. Eastern Utah is dinosaur country. Prehistoric giants like the Brontosaurus, Tyrannosaurus rex, and Triceratops used to roam here, and many fossils have been found in this area. Life-size models help visitors to imagine what these amazing creatures, which actually did once exist but have been extinct now for millions of years, might have looked like. A dinosaur national monument has been established on the Utah-Colorado border, with a unique visitor center, one side of which is the actual wall of a quarry where fossil remains have been uncovered. From our nearby campsite, we made an on-foot excursion to visit this monument and its special exhibits. Here we could see giant bones still embodied in the rock and learn how paleontologists carefully remove the fossils and then assemble them in the form of complete skeletons. Our next destination was the state of Colorado and Rocky Mountain National Park, where on Sunday morning we attended an inspiring outdoor worship service conducted by the Interdenominational National Park Ministry. This is where we crossed back over the Continental Divide at Milner Pass, this time traversing from west to east, looking behind toward the Pacific and ahead toward the Atlantic.